been all night there.
Wait, no, are you done? Okay.
I am Krista, daughter of Kathy and David, and Uncle Tony is my uncle. So yes, I have a short reading, but since I'm up in front of you, I'm going to take some liberties to share a couple memories. My goal is to get through this without crying, so maybe we can have like a fun sign if I start to get choked up and bring me back. Thank you, yeah. Okay. All right, so anybody who spent more than 5 minutes with Uncle Tony had an understanding of what one might call high energy. So we grew up in a family that was always warm and loving, hugs and kisses to go around. I remember lipstick stains on my face and my forehead, hugs really tight that I couldn't breathe. And I remember that most often Uncle Tony skipped the hugs and he went straight to like a headlock and stage fighting. Yeah, so it was kind of as if his excitement just was too big for like typical pleasantries. So engaging with Uncle Tony often felt like somebody shoved you onto a stage and all of a sudden you're like doing high kicks and you're like, you know, trying to keep up with the music. I don't know many people with a personality as huge as his. His wide eyes and energetic smile have been captured in pictures 100 times over, as we can see. But I wanted to share a couple really quiet things that I don't know were captured as much that built relationships. So he always sent some sort of yummy fruit or snacks around the holidays, which I so appreciated. Like, even if I hadn't heard from him, it's like, you know, like something delicious showed up. And it was just so generous and thoughtful. Okay.
Do it.
He gave, thanks y'all. He gave me very free and thorough neurological advice all the time. Like it'd be 11 at night and I'd be like, I'm having this thing. and he'd write back and be like, do this or try this or whatever. It was very sweet. And so generous. And I've heard now in the last couple days that he did that for people who he didn't know and that weren't his niece. So yes, I still feel special, but I know that he did that for a lot of people. Let's see. He shared. I really liked talking to him about music and artists that he loved. We had some folks in common, like Brandi Carlile, who's like one of my favorites, but I didn't realize that he liked her, and so we were texting back and forth about her, which was really cool. He was generous with his time, you know, in talking about those things. And he built relationships and was curious about other people in the world, as we're hearing these stories of him, you know, engaging the wait staff at these restaurants and everything. So, so anyway, the first law, I've been really sciencey, which is ironic because I want to share with you that the first law of thermodynamics is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only converted from one form to another. So I know that a bit of his energy now lives in all of us, born out of the relationships that we had with him. So I was asked to do a reading today, and I scoured a lot of sources, and I was looking for something that would capture him, like something big and bright and energetic like him. But what I found was something by a rabbi and humanist, Harold Kushner, to remind us of what matters most, and I just want to share that now. So I'm going to read that. Here we go. Okay. I was sitting on the beach one summer day, watching two children, a boy and a girl, playing in the sand. They were hard at work building an elaborate sand castle by the water's edge, with gates and towers and moats and internal passages. Just when they had nearly finished their project, a big wave came along and knocked it down, reducing it to a heap of wet sand. I expected the children to burst into tears, devastated by what had happened to all of their hard work. But they surprised me. Instead, they ran up the shore away from the water, laughing and holding hands, and sat down to build another castle. Okay. I realized that they had taught me an important lesson. All the things in our lives, all the complicated structures we spend so much time and energy creating, are built on sand. Our relationships to other people endure. Sooner or later, the wave will come along and knock down what we have worked so hard to build up. When that happens, only the person who has somebody's hand to hold will be able to laugh.
So we've reached the point in the gathering today where we're going to have family and friends offer up recollections and reflections. And I will start off because I have a statement from Rob Amberg, who is Tony and Nick's cousin. His mom, Caddy, was Mrs. Vitto's cousin, and he lives down in North Carolina now, and so I'll just read this on his behalf. Tony and I go way back. Our mothers were first cousins and best friends. So when my mother birthed me in late December 1947, and Tony's mother, Sel Vitto, brought Tony into the world 7 months later, it was quite natural for us to spend time together. When Tony's brother Nicky was born, a year and a half later, the three of us made a team of sorts, often with the express purpose of harassing my two younger sisters. Tony and I went in separate directions in high school and college, sometimes seeing each other during holidays for touch football games, or over at Aunt Mary's for Italian cookies, pastries, and liquor for the adults. Despite the distance between us and the different life experiences, there remained an indelible bond between us, one forged through family, memory, and instant familiarity and ease. Tony was a student of science, and a brief scan of his obituary will show you the heights to which he took both his research work and his medical practice. I always thought he was the smartest person in the family, although I have since learned that smartness comes in many different forms. Even so, Tony was a very bright guy, yet as down-to-earth as a person could possibly be. He was generous and funny, with an infectious laugh that would dominate a room, inquisitive, curious, with an indelible memory for detail. Tony clearly loved life, and he enjoyed it to the fullest. Music, from opera to rock and roll, sports of all kinds. Food was another passion, and he was an excellent cook, and of course, wine. He had expensive taste. I remember being at his office in Morgan Hill when he asked if I could help him load some boxes into his Mercedes. There were maybe a couple of dozen boxes, all the same, stamped with Italian words, some of which I understood. "What is this stuff?" I asked. "That's my Pope water," he replied. "I drink the same water as the Pope and have it delivered from Rome. I do the same with my balsamic." It was a head-shaking moment for me. It seemed that as we aged, we had more contact with one another. Visits with him in California and Massachusetts, meetups in Maryland for weddings, and while not frequent, there were regular phone calls over the years. Leslie and I spoke of visiting Tony in New Jersey, along with some other family and friends on the peninsula. I hadn't spoken with Nicky for a few years, so when my phone said I was getting a call from him, I suspected it to be about Tony. He had been having health problems lately and struggling with a number of long, drawn-out personal issues. But I knew he was looking to the future with a positive outlook and anticipation of what the future would bring. I'll miss you, cousin. And I guess since I'm up here, I'll go ahead and offer up some recollections of my own. And, as Jeff has alluded to, we became, well, number one, it's rare, I think, for someone to be blessed with a lifelong friend. And I've been thrice blessed because I met Jeff in 1962 and we've remained constant friends throughout all these years. And then Nikki and Tony came to North Bethesda Junior High School, and while I knew of them, I didn't know them. It wasn't until our senior year, which would have been 65, 66, that our Venn diagram finally intersected, and that was the concert chorus. I had been in the concert chorus the previous year, Jeff and I both, and Tony came in on our senior year. We were both tenors, we were both small, and we sat together in the front row. And we developed an immediate affinity. And through that beginning, like the planting of a sapling in fertile ground, began a long-lasting friendship. And through that meeting, I met Nick, I met Catherine, I met Mr. and Mrs. Vitto, and they welcomed me into their family. And it's been just a humbling experience for me to have been honored to be a part of this Vitto family. And so the sapling continued to grow into a larger tree. And I got to know the extended family. When on graduation night, Tony invited Jeff and me to come over to Aunt Mary's for a graduation party. So I got to meet Aunt Mary and Uncle John. And they never had children, so you were immediately treated as one of their children. I got to meet Angelo and Josephine. I got to meet, well, I don't know that I got to meet, John and Margaret were there, but they tended to stay off by themselves and kind of just watch what was going on around them. I got to meet Mike and later on Francis. I only met Pete a couple of times because he very often wasn't there. And they warmly welcomed us into their midst, and it just grew from there. And I mean, one of the biggest honors that ever came to me was when Mrs. Vitto died, and Mr. Vitto asked me to be a pallbearer at her funeral. And I found out later from Tony that a lot of people were not happy with that decision. They did not appreciate having someone who wasn't family in such a role. But to me, it was a tremendous honor. And I can hear her voice so clearly today. She had that smoker's voice that was just hoarse with this irreverent, she would go after you guys, but it was with love. Your dad, maybe not so much. And so it continued the family continued to grow, and I don't know how, but I continued to be invited into this family and to be a part of it and to be grafted in. And it was just wonderful to watch it grow. I loved Catherine so much. She was a sister to me. And she had some false starts in dating, and then this guy named David showed up. And Tony, Nikki, and I were looking him over and trying to figure out, is this guy? And we decided he was okay. And so Catherine and David married. And then came Anna and Krista. And the family continued to branch out and grow. And then came Dale. And Dale came along and became a part of the family. And then came Louise. And Louise became part of the family. And then came Jennifer and Julie and Janelle and Nick. And then came, we continued to grow and branch out even further and further. And then came Tom, and then came Claire. And it was just so wonderful to be a part of this whole process. And I just, like I said, it's just so humbling to me. And I was just so totally shocked. We've had a lot of tragedy, losing people way too young. And I remember when we heard about Mrs. Vitto going down to Duke University for surgery. She was such a wonderful, wonderful person. And then not long after that, Mr. Vitto. And then Catherine just stunned us. And we went out for her funeral. And that was just so hard to take. But we persevered, we continued on. And we continued to grow it as a family, me adopted. And then came along James, and then came along Dustin. And then the next generation came along and continues to flourish to this day. And I am so honored and humbled to be here with you today and to be welcomed into and be part of this family. And so now I'm going to open it up to whoever wants to share at this point.
Jeff Cinderson, and 1/3 of the trio. As Steve was talking, I feel a little envious because we were close friends in high school, and then I went away to college in Oklahoma, and I continue to live in Oklahoma 50 plus years later. But I'd never lost contact with Tony, and then obviously with Nick too. And as I stand here, I look around and I realize that with the exception of Nick and Steve, I've known Tony longer than anybody else in this room. But I have many fond memories of Tony, especially when we were in concert chorus and in a madrigal group. We had a lot of fun singing. One of the stories I mentioned to Claire, she didn't realize this until I told her, that Tony was a pretty good wrestler in high school. And our senior year, one of the matches, he broke his opponent's arm. and obviously the match was ended and Tony won by forfeit. But, other than that, Tony was a pretty easygoing guy. Get him on a wrestling match, he was something else, though. I attended his wedding with Louise, and like I said, I've stayed in touch with him and with the Vitto family ever since. When we were still in high school, Steve and I would frequently go over to the Vitto house because it was such a neat place to be. Mrs. Vitto was such a gregarious person, and even though Mr. Vitto was pretty sick at that time, it was still fun to talk with him. And Catherine, like Steve said, she was like a big sister, and we would banter back and forth frequently. We had a great time with her. When I read the obituary that Claire wrote, it occurred to me then what a talented, intelligent person Tony was. To me, all the years that I knew him, he was never Dr. Anthony Vitto, PhD in biochemistry, or he was never Dr. Anthony Vitto, MD in neurology. He was always Tony. And I say that because he was a very humble person. He was never bragged on himself. He certainly had every reason to, but very down to earth, and just a neat person. One of the last memories I have of Tony is when Steve and Nick and I went up to Massachusetts 7 years ago to spend a weekend with Tony, and we had a great time then. And then the last time I really spent any time with Tony was our 50th high school reunion. And it just so happened that I was having some neurological problems of my own, and he came up to my hotel room where I was staying, and he essentially checked me out, and he diagnosed it correctly, and normal pressure hydrocephalus is what I had, which required surgery shortly after that. But and he was willing to check me out, and he knew his stuff, that's for sure. But although I chose to move away, I still kept in touch with Tony directly and certainly indirectly through Steve and through Nick, and I will miss him. I miss him already. Always will. Thank you.
I went through boxes and boxes, and he took this picture, and some of you have it, of Anna Vitto, Aunt Mary's mother. And it was on a piece of cardboard, and in the back it has his name. It said 75, Anthony Vitto. So I thought, well, he took this picture. I didn't know where it came from. Anyway, I have something to read that Aunt Marianne Stacy wrote. I didn't really want to say anything. I'm the sister-in-law, and I took away Nick, who, when we first were married and would visit, well, the first time I saw them together, I think, was down in Tennessee. And the whole time they were together, they would just hit each other. Like, right to make a bruise, And then thereafter, we came home and he started hitting me like that. I'm like, I am not Tony. Don't hit me, And then when Tony would come to visit us, do you remember? He was always a curious fellow.
Yes.
And so he'd open every cabinet, every door to see what was in it. And apparently I inherited his old childhood dresser. And so he came in the bedroom and he opened one. Like, what are you doing? Anyway, quite an unusual person. Anyway, he was quirky, but he was endearing, wasn't he? He was so fun. So from Aunt Mary, and that's all I'm going to say about me. Some thoughts from Aunt Mary that she wrote, something brief, but she says, I am so sorry that I could not be here with everyone to help celebrate Tony, a life well lived. And just to say about that, we did try to organize this near her, but I think just being out in public is too much, and her vision and especially her hearing deficits just make it impossible. Just listening to us talk would be awful for her, so it's just too much. But anyway, memories of Tony are unending, and I will treasure them always. His childhood mischief and happy-go-lucky attitude was memorable. Enough said. I was always fascinated by his love of good food as a youngster. He would try anything and form an opinion. This may have started at his grandmother's home, at dinners on Sundays and holidays. He was always the first to the table and made sure he got the biggest serving of spare ribs in sauce and regatta ziti. I remember how excited he was when he discovered black truffles growing in his garden. Remember that? That was beside his house, wasn't it? You would think he discovered gold. This past Christmas, he emailed me photos of the fabulous dinner he prepared for Claire and Gabe. You could just see his pleasure smiling ear to ear. When he was telling me about the new home he was building, he mentioned he was putting in an elevator so that I would not have to do stairs. Well, I am planning on taking that elevator someday soon and meet him again for a fabulous dinner. Rest in peace, Tony. Love you endlessly. Aunt Mary.
I'm David Lindemer, brother-in-law. It didn't make it into the slide program, but I thought it should be mentioned for those that may not know this. Tony's first national recognition of his neurological acumen was published in the National Enquirer. And I just always, every time I recall that, it's just quite amazing. I had sent Claire several memories. I'm just going to read, I think, one of these. At Nick and Dale's wedding, as I recall, I know the event happened, and I'm quite certain it was at their wedding. Tony was to take part in that ceremony, and Tony showed up with a pair of shoes newly modified with significant lifts. He was thinking incorrectly that Nick wouldn't notice. There are several other memories.
I was advised maybe if I wanted to say something I should practice, and then I did not. So I was also advised that, maybe I could just focus on what it was like to be his daughter, because that's not something other people have. So, and I feel really lucky that I did. So some of the experiences about what it was like to be his daughter. He was really into sharing culture with his kids. It's important to him to share tradition, and to share art and to share music and culture. So I spent a lot of our time when growing up being dragged around to art museums, a lot of time being dragged to gift shops because he was really into gift shops for some reason. Lots of t-shirts and hats and prints and things were purchased on these trips. He loved music. A lot of people already mentioned he had really eclectic tastes. He took us to the San Francisco Symphony. He took us to see Damn Yankees, which was my first musical. He took us to see Ladysmith Black Mambazo and Alison Krauss. He was really into popular music. I mean, still, his ringtone was Hotline Bling by Drake. It was perfect, I thought, and just for him. I don't think he was really a musical person. He liked to sing, he always did. He would just burst into song. When he'd cook something, he'd like present it to us and then bellow, "Food, glorious food, hot sausage and mustard." When I would have slumber parties at my house, and it'd be me, like 10, with my other girlfriends. He would, to himself, walking by, just say, "Chickens cackling in a barn." He would take us whale watching. He took us to Disneyland. He made fun of me because I had a tantrum during the Electric Light Parade. He brought that up recently because he thought it was really funny. He took us to all kinds of restaurants. I didn't realize that he always had an open palate. I didn't realize that was a long time thing, but definitely how I was raised. When I was in elementary school, I had to write a report on eels. And so I was probably 8, and so I don't know if he had anything to do with the report, but he took us out to sushi so we could eat unagi, which felt right on because it was sort of playful, and it was definitely kind of nerdy, and it was definitely kind of fancy and like a food thing, and I really appreciated that element that he brought to our lives. He sort of forcibly, maybe a little bit against my and Tom's will, like shoved us into culture, shoved us into tradition, built a lot. He cared a lot about sort of traditional stuff. Like from his family, I think he really valued the Vitto family, and I think that he wanted us to have that too, even though we were on the other side of the country and kind of removed. He had our family portrait taken. He pressured me into taking softball. He tried to teach me how to ride a bike. Failed. I was in tears, but he tried really hard. He took us to the hobby shop. He declared Sundays donut days, and we would have donuts every Sunday when we were little kids growing up. I thought this was fun. When he first moved to California, he lived in a 2-bedroom apartment when he was doing his residency. So my bed was actually in the closet, and he just took off the doors, so Tom and I shared a room. And my parents were separated, so on Fridays he would pick us up at my mom's house and take us to the apartment, and we'd spend the weekend with him. And then one day he picked us up, and he just drove us to this random house, and he was like, "We live here now." And there's no furniture or anything, so he just set us loose, and we just ran around, and I literally did cartwheels to the living room. It was so exciting, and it was just such this like surprise. And he was so much about just trying to make life exciting and fun, and he really enjoyed getting kids riled up and getting pets riled up. Definitely, if you were trying to train your dog like not to jump on people, don't invite him to your house because he just wanted to get everyone kind of excited. And I think when I was growing up, I took that all very much for granted. That was sort of, he pressured us to do these things, to have these experiences, and we just kind of like were along for the ride a little bit. And then as an adult, I really appreciate a lot of that more and differently. He was endlessly supportive of me. He never tried to pressure me to have any other life than the life I was leading. When I was interested in something, he would just support it wholeheartedly. When I was interested in filmmaking, he bought me books, and he bought me magazines, and he took me to things. And when I switched gears and moved into architecture, he bought me books, you know, sent me articles, and didn't miss a beat, and was just like endlessly curious about what I was going to do, and had no expectations I should do anything other than that. And it was I realized that's not universal, that's not something all people have, and I really valued his just, he got a kick out of life, and he got a kick out of me and what I was doing, and he didn't seem to have any expectation of anything else. As an adult child of Tony Vitto, he was really fun to introduce to my friends. Really appreciated that, you know, he would drink and he would chat. And I was thinking recently, and I think we all know this, but, you know, that he was charming, but it wasn't just because he was so loud and so playful and aggressive and whatever, stylish. It was because he was really curious about people, and he would just ask questions and be interested in people. And I think that that was a lot of the basis of it, I guess. Like, I would brag about, you know, whatever he was into or whatever he was doing, but I think that when he got in a room and he was drinking wine and chatting, he was really listening. So that was great. I loved that he was a bleeding heart liberal. It was nice for me and my New York friends. He used to mention things quietly to me when I was a kid, to himself really, that I did not understand until years later. And I was like, oh, I see. This is how he felt about the world, and he understood the world to be. He was a big supporter in feminism and social justice, and he wanted the world to be a good place, and he was a compassionate person. And I guess the only other thing I was going to say was I was really interested and proud, and I hope that I can sort of carry with me his like particular brand of nerdiness. When we cleaned out the apartment he was living in, and we went through his files, he had, you know, files about, you know, health insurance and the car title or whatever. He also had a file called Figs. He had a file called Mushrooms. He had a file called Local Hero, which was just his favorite movie from 1983 that he had printed out some things about it. He had poetry. He had some of his family's medical records because he cared a lot. And it was sort of nice to get a little physical imprint of what he cared about when he was kind of like on his own, doing his own thing and thinking his own thoughts. He, you know, it's been sad. I mean, he ingratiated himself to everyone he met. It was so easy. Was fearless talking to people. He just would talk to strangers and just ask them questions and get involved, and it was great. And I hope that I can carry some of those qualities with me, and I hope that we all do. I think that a lot of the way he lived was really resilient. I think I would say that passion for life, despite all of the loss, I mean, you know, when my brother died, that, you know, destroyed him, I think, but he lived on and found passion and found joy and found things to be interested in, and found music to love and art to love and people to support and food to eat and wine to drink. And I think that that's something that I hope that we can all do too. And I really, again, didn't appreciate it when I was a kid, but I respect it so much. And the fact that he was building a house at the end of, you know, he didn't know it was the end of his life, but like that he was building a house now, late in life, to sort of start, you know, to make this whole new phase just with such passion and such joy and such optimism. I think it's a nice way to live, and I hope that I can do that.
I didn't think I was going to go after Claire. So this is going to be like, yeah. That was beautiful. This is sort of silly. So anyway. So a visit from Uncle Tony was always one of the highlights of my childhood. And I think I speak for all of my siblings. It was kind of like watching a hummingbird kind of flit from room to room and person to person, and you were trying to keep up, and we kind of just all followed him around like the Pied Piper. it was slow in New Holland where we lived, so there wasn't, there was cows, and then Uncle Tony would visit. Anyway, he was just in constant motion, and I love how everybody mentioned his energy. And anyway, and it was the Nick and Tony show, and they were together at our house, and we would just follow them and watch them, and it was laughing and hitting and hilarious. And my quiet Midwestern mother was in the kitchen hiding. Anyway, but when he stopped goofing around, and I got his attention, and I wanted to do a cartwheel for him or something silly, he would always say, "That's amazing," and I can hear him say that, and he said that to my kids too. We would go up and do something for him, and "That's amazing." Like, I just remember feeling really delighted when I was around him. He was just he took an interest in people. And anyway, whether it was really amazing or not, he made me feel that way. So anyway, one of my sort of weird but very clear memories of him was, for some reason, we were on vacation, maybe at the beach or something, and I guess he picked the short straw and had to take me to the bathroom. I was really young, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, and he taught me about germs in a public space, and he taught me how to put toilet paper on a toilet seat, and you never touch the flusher with your hand, you always use your foot. And I, to this day, still do that. And that's from Uncle Tony. I was just very acutely aware of germs at a young age. So, thank you, Uncle Tony. Yeah. And soon after, this might have been the same trip, but I don't know, at some point very soon after, so I don't know if he was a germaphobe or not, but he, it was just a good, healthy awareness of germs. So I was in the back of his car with Tom next to me and Claire next to Tom, and I will spare you what we had just had lunch. I'll spare you what we had for lunch. But I used to get car sick pretty easily as a kid, and still do. But I threw up all over the back of his car. So I just remember Tom going, "Ugh," and like trying to move to the other side of the, and he was so grossed out, and Claire was always sweet, and, and didn't really say anything. And I just remember, it's a little blurry, but I do remember Tony just, "That's disgusting," while he's trying to drive. And anyway, and after that, it kind of ends there. I don't know who cleaned it up, or anyway, it was just, I've apologized as an adult to him for that still. I just felt so bad, because that's so gross. Anyway, my dad took a ton of videos of family get-togethers, and as kids, we watched those on repeat growing up, because they were so funny. And there have been many zany people in the Vitto family over the years, but Tony gets the award for most energetic and hilarious player of the Vitto troupe. And our family will never be the same without him. This gathering feels really incomplete without him. And he just made an imprint on everyone's hearts here in different ways. And because of that, we'll each carry him with us always. And my last interaction with him was a few days before he passed away. We were texting, and he was sending me pictures of his new beach house and how excited he was. And he said that he was so excited for my kids to come and see the dolphins. And he just was always thinking about other people's experience. He wanted to provide amazing experiences for people. He did that for you guys growing up, and he was just others focused in that way, that he wanted everyone to have a great time and experience life the way he loved it. So we'll miss him.
Claire moved into her dad's house, and we all had cars and could just drive to Morgan Hill when we felt like it, because we all lived in Palo Alto. He would host us all the time. I never remember once being told, "Oh, my dad doesn't really want people over this weekend," or "Oh, you guys create a bit of a mess," or he just wants to watch the big TV himself. It was always "Come on over." Claire and I did a show together in high school, and we would stay up late and have writing sessions with all our friends in the living room. We watched The 10th Kingdom in his living room, and he would come in, and probably comment on whatever it was we were doing or whatever it was we were watching and say, you know, like, what is this nonsense? What, you guys are stupid. And I'm like, but he was always really supportive of Claire hosting, and he would always host us. And we'd always, you know, Claire would come back from the holidays and she'd tell us about the parties that he hosted himself. And like, now that I'm older and I realize how much work hosting is and having people over to your home and the prep and the cleaning up and the whole thing, like, it really is. I mean, you guys were talking about this before, just like that generosity of spirit and just caring so much about other people having a good time. Like, when you're hosting a party, you're not always having the best of time, but you're getting all that energy back because you know that you're providing people with the best time. And I didn't appreciate it at the time. Like Claire was saying that too. It's when you're a teenager, you're selfish and you're just like doing whatever. But I do appreciate that he opened his home to us and that he let us have so much of Claire's time, and you know, gently made fun of us and was just absolutely a fun parent who wanted to support Claire. And I just really appreciate that. Thanks.
With your computer expertise, you must be from, what, 1950? I was actually born in 48. We were the same age, and I'd only known him a year and a half, but it was full of all these pictures and all the information I'm hearing today. All the pictures of the persons above. I recognize all the names because he wanted to make sure my mind was full of his life. I have, sorry. In the last few months, I've written 500 poems. I'm dedicating to him in 5 books. When someone passes, we feel that they have taken a part of us with them, but this has not happened in this case. I feel that a part of him has remained with each of us, and we need to embrace that and go forward, not go on, but go forward with that. He left a part of his mind, so we learn to be open, we learn to be creative, we learn to seek knowledge wherever we can. He left a part of his heart, and we learn compassion and kindness through that. Our souls, he's a part of our soul in the absolute joy that he extended to all persons and to his experiences. So we go forward with his spirit, which is one of not sadness, but joy. Thank you. Thank you so much for being there for him all this time.
I knew Tony when both of us were postdoc at UCSD. Oh. One thing that stood out during that period of time is he always came to work at night when everyone else is home, and he came to the lab to avoid our mean, nasty boss lady. Yeah. And he said if he didn't come to work, he felt guilty, and it's not good for his heart. So he came to work, and it's better for his heart. My family also has a special bonding with Tony's family because his Tommy has the same birthday, October 17th, as my daughter, Mabel, just 1 year apart. So we celebrate Mabel's first birthday and Tommy's second birthday together at his house. He is a very kind man, curious, never judgmental, and always makes you feel very comfortable. Such a pleasure to know him. Thank you.
Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble, or hardship, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus, our Lord. And then the second verse is Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find it. Knock and the door will be opened to you. James?
As I was asked to kind of provide closing comments, I've been thinking about Uncle Tony. And you know what? To everybody who met him, he was Uncle Tony. You know, it was kind of like Aunt Mary. Aunt Mary was Aunt Mary to everybody, is Aunt Mary to everybody. So just a special person. You know, and as I reflect on that, I kept thinking about how interested he was into learning everything, anything that was new or from a different angle, he wanted to know about it. But as I'm sitting here listening, it's obvious that the reason he wanted to know was because he wanted to know you. He didn't just want to know information, he wanted to know why it was important to you. And what was interesting to you about it, and really kind of dug into why you saw the world the way you did, why it was so magical for you, and that's just a wonderful, generous heart, and how he connected to everybody, and that was just so neat. As someone who married into this wonderful family, I hope you all realize how unique this is and how special this is. And the legacy of Uncle Tony is the love that's in this room and the memories that we have of him, and the generosity of heart that was Uncle Tony. And you know, it just started having me to reflect. It's a wonderful thing. We heard from some of these scriptures that the God of this universe wants to know us like that too. He wants to know us so much and so deeply that he was willing to die just for the chance to get to know us. Just for the chance. And that's an amazing thought to me. The curiosity, the wanting to know everything. I think about the important questions of life. Of who are we? Why are we here? Why are relationships so important to us? It stems back from that creator who was willing to sacrifice everything for the chance of a relationship with us. And that's just such a magical thing. And Uncle Tony just really kind of pointed the light in that direction of connecting one-on-one, person to person, moment by moment. You're right, the hummingbird, Jen, the hummingbird thing, that was him. I was just astounded the first time I met him and just watching him float around everybody. That was so wonderful. But thank you all for coming. It was neat to share the memories. It was neat for me just to be able to hear more and feel like I know him more through that. So let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you. Thank you for Uncle Tony. Thank you for the experiences that we have, for the wonderful times, the memories of love, the care, the intention to seek after each person and to really connect with them, the generous heart, the wonderful spirit that you gave to us for the years that Uncle Tony was on the earth, Lord. And we thank you for that. We thank you for what's left with us, just those wonderful memories, the family here around us, Lord. I pray for comfort. I pray that you comfort everyone here in this room and those who are listening in on this. Lord, we need your comfort now more than ever. Give us the peace that comes from only you, Lord, and that we can rest in that. Lord, thank you for your willingness to want to connect with us, Lord. I pray that we can reach out and dig into that deep mystery that the creator of the universe wants to know me personally. I still don't understand that, but that, Lord, that's just wonderful, and we saw that in Tony. Lord, thank you for this wonderful time together. I pray that you bless each and every one of us, Lord, and guide us, direct us, and comfort us, wrap us in your love, now and in the days to come. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So thank you all for coming. There will be a light dinner at the Vitto's house, and if you need details, directions, or whatever, please see one of the Vitto's. And again, just thank you for a wonderful time to get to share and remember Tony. All right, thanks.
Why don't you come out and play soccer? And I said, nobody asked me. So then the next year, the senior year, I